Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Storm Collectibles Samurai Shodown HAOHMARU figure, which is kind of a big deal because it's a new license yet again from Storm, and some people love that, some people hate that. I personally think it's a good thing for one reason, in that we're getting figures of licenses that we don't get, generally speaking. It's a bad thing because they can only produce so much at a time, so every license that they acquire means fewer figures from each license can be released. That's definitely an issue. As long as they eventually get to them, I guess it's okay. You guys can let me know how you feel about that. But Samurai Shodown is a line that I think a lot of people have, or a license that I think a lot of people have wanted a line for a long time. And I just found out through my research for this character that he's in Soul Calibur now, which is really cool, and it makes me think Storm should do Soul Calibur figures. I know the games have gotten pretty crappy lately, but, well, it wasn't around for a long time. Anyway, I'd like to see Nightmare and Mitsurugi and Yoshimitsu and all those cool ones. Anyway, okay, let's do the review for this guy. There's a lot of good stuff here, some stuff that's a little questionable, and some stuff I haven't looked at yet, so we're gonna learn about it together. Like his knees. Do they work? We'll see. All right, let's get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just about 7 inches to the top of his head, not the poofiness of his hair, which makes him pretty close to, let's say, 17.5 centimeters. And hopefully the lighting is okay for this. Obviously he's wearing white, and so I have to be careful to not blow him out completely, but then he's also got a lot of shadowing going on in his face, so there's not much I can do about that. Hopefully it works out. But this guy looks pretty good overall, and we will talk about that. But first, question of the day. Which license, which Storm has not yet acquired, would you like to see them acquire? I would love, as I've already mentioned, Soul Calibur. I think it's just a proper fit for them. They've already done lots of figures like most of the characters that I want to see from Soul Calibur, so that would be awesome. And I think it would suit them to put them in with all these other fighting licenses that they've already gotten. You can let me know how you feel about that. All right, let's talk about the figure. I want to get this out of the way. I'll get that out of the way off camera. I'm so scared of tearing that little bit. You see that little bit that's holding it on in there? It's very stiff, very snug. Oh, it's going now. All right, but it is. That's a risky thing. Soft plastic like this can just tear so easily, and after my Raiden tore without me even touching it, I'm very nervous now. But okay, as far as the aesthetics go on this guy, Storm has a very broad thing going. Like, they've done that for all of their figures basically from the beginning, and it's only gotten more noticeable as they've continued. They're very chunky, very thick, and it has to be that they're doing it intentionally at this point, because for some of them it seemed like they weren't doing it at all. And then big characters like Zangief, or Zangief, he wasn't as broad as he should have been probably, so it was kind of like, are they doing it on purpose or not? This guy's really thick, and it's mostly hidden by the fact that he's got really thick clothes on, and he looks super chunky most of the time anyway, and he's got the big Street Fighter type build normally. But even for him, he's still fairly stocky. Like, if you didn't realize that he was wearing poofy clothes, he would look like a butter boy. That's not a thing, I don't think. If that's a thing, it's probably not what I meant for it to mean. But he's very, very thick. If you don't like that, that's gonna be something you have to deal with. Luckily, his big baggy pants and things kind of do a little bit of work to hide that. But the white on him is nicely done. I don't see any huge noticeable problems. There's a little bit of shading throughout, a little bit of gray shading. The black paint on here is very clean throughout the top, throughout the triangles and the pants. That's all good. The red pieces are red. There's no problem there. His drinking gourd is nicely painted. That's fine. The hair has the appropriate sculpt. No issue there. I think the face is a reasonable enough likeness. His nose is kind of pointy, but it kind of suits him also, so it's all right. Yeah, the only real issue I have with this guy, because I can live with the thickness, that's the way Storm's doing it, his skin's pretty red. It's got a lot of red to it. Let me grab the packaging. For those of you that aren't familiar, he's supposed to look like a normal human. You can see right there, his skin tone is skin tone. Right there, again, skin tone is skin tone. That's a good example of how he looks really chunky a lot of the time anyway, so that's fine. But yeah, the skin tone's definitely weird on this figure. Even on the figure proto, he's got regular skin tone, but on the actual release, he's very red. Like, this is, if you guys remember my Sagat reviews, this is normal color Sagat, and this is Turbo in the white trunks with the darker skin, which was normal for Sagat, for the Turbo colors. That's what this is. It's very red, or Akuma even. He's got very red skin. So that's a little bit strange. I don't know. I know they have like a couple different versions of him out there now with like blood on him and stuff. I wonder if he's always red, or if they just happen to make this one a little bit tanned. Whatever, it could look better, but it still looks pretty good. So I'm going to give this guy an aesthetic rating of 8 out of 10. He's a little chunky, and he's a little bit too red, but otherwise that is still a pretty good rating, and it's still a pretty good looking figure. Okay, as far as accessories go, we do have 2 different pieces of hair for the back of his head. They're so similar, I don't know why they bothered, honestly. Like, one of them is definitely more back and more windswept, and one of them hangs more straight down, but do you need both? I don't know. It seems like an odd choice for budget, but you do get them. The one that hangs more down will touch the clothing, so be careful that you don't get any transfer there, but you do have those 2 options. And then as far as faces, or the whole head, I guess, really, we have the neutral one that comes on him in the package. One where his teeth are showing and he's angry, and one where his teeth are showing and he's happy. For hands, we have the 2 fist hands that come on him in the package, 2 gripping hands, 2 kind of clenchy hands, and then 2 wide open hands. You already saw we get his katana and his scabbard, or sheath. And then we do get the effect part that goes with the sword, which does work reasonably well. Not as saturated as I might like, but it's still pretty good, so I'll take it. Accessory-wise, I'll give this guy an 8 out of 10, only because Storm is really good with energy effects, like incredibly good most of the time. This guy's one piece is a little bit lackluster, and there's a few that they could have included that would have really pushed this guy over the top, so that's still a good rating, though. I want to touch on one thing. People comment a lot about, because I've mentioned it in reviews, about which way the katana should go in his holster. In his holster. That's not what you call that. Well, obviously, there's source material for this guy, so you can just look. But historically speaking, if they weren't wearing armor, Samurai or Ronin, if they weren't wearing armor, it was better for them to have the sword like this, because they would draw it forward, ready to attack, and they were able to do that. Oftentimes, when they were wearing armor, it was too difficult to do that for range of motion, so they tended to wear them like this, with the curve going down, and it was easier for them to draw the sword in an effective way. There was no actual rule for it. I've actually looked this up multiple times, just for research purposes. That's generally the way you can go about that. Okay, let's talk about the articulation. It's the same articulation we see for almost every Storm figure from the waist up. From the waist down, it's going to be a little bit unique. But for the head, we have a big ball peg that connects the head all the way down into the skeleton. It's a double ball peg, so it lets the neck move around and the head move around. You really shouldn't have any issue. It seems to work really nicely on this guy, other than the hair, which is why I said you should use the more windswept one than the close one, because as soon as you start moving the head, that's going to be bumping up against his white clothes, and that seems like a bad idea to me. But the head does move around nicely. I don't have any issue with that. Shoulders, they have a ball hinge right here with a peg that connects into the skeleton in here, and then this is just a floating piece, so you can move the arm all the way around. That does work well. It's nicely hidden by this guy's clothes, so character design suits the engineering. That ball peg works nicely. How's the shoulder itself? Okay, well, the ball peg comes out a little bit more easily. Nothing's broken, which I guess is good. It wasn't loose as I was moving it, so again, it's not a bad thing, but that did pop out way too easily. Yeah, it's not loose. Huh, weird. Well, either way, the shoulder works. I wonder if they all pop out. It's not usual that you have a tight joint that pops out easily, but other than being a nuisance, that shouldn't be a problem. Nothing's broken, so that's okay. Full rotation, of course, and I probably just put too much torque on it. Bicep swivel is very tight. It feels like it's binding at the front and the back, so at the top of the bicep and at the tricep, it's kind of binding against the shoulder, but it is there, and you can probably, yeah, you can just force it. I'm not going to because I don't want to mess mine up, but it'll work if you want to. All right, double jointed elbow, just better than 90 degrees. If you took these things off, you'd get a little bit more range, obviously, and they are just floating pieces, but not a ton of range, probably enough. Ball hinge wrists work nicely, no problems there. The torso on these guys, we have some ball sockets or ball pegs that hold them all together, so you have a diaphragm joint at the top. It's gonna be hard to pose this guy because he's got so much going on. Okay, so this is very tight along his butt, and it doesn't really split until, well, it doesn't split until you get all the way to the front. So that's going to be a little bit limiting for the upper body. Let's see if we can get it to pose too much. Well, that's moving around on the ball peg at the bottom between the waist and the crotch, or the abdomen and the crotch. That's that ball peg. The upper ball peg, I can't really get in there to move it, and it seems very stiff. But there is another, at least a single, I think it might be a double in there. I can't really get it to move. And that's gonna take some effort. The lower ball peg does work, although you can hear that. It doesn't seem like it's gonna be a problem, though. When you hear that kind of noise and feel that kind of resistance where it's like clicking, even though it's just a ball socket, you have to be aware that it could be shredding. It probably is the plastic on the inside. It's either going to get loose because you're losing material, or that material is going to build up and it's going to seize up and you're going to get it very tight. So if you're into this sort of thing of slight, not modification really, but maintenance on a figure, I would recommend some silicone grease or oil, pure silicone or silicone shock oil for like RC cars, just a tiny little bit in that socket. Now you do have to get to it somehow, so that's why I'm not necessarily recommending this, but a tiny little bit will go a long way and protect that joint from being a problem. It should free it right up, but again, a little bit goes a long way and you have to get to it, so do that at your own risk. So I'm just going to count this as not really working well. Out of the package, it doesn't work well. We can't move this joint, and that joint is a problem. So torso is very limited in that regard. Now let's check out the hips and see what we have going on. So it's a standard type of joint for them. The way there's no split, they should have definitely added a split here. That's a big bummer, because as you can see, it's bunching up like crazy. And he probably doesn't need to go any farther than that, but I really wouldn't feel comfortable even trying, even though he probably could go farther than that because of the way this shirt piece is designed. But that's still a pretty good range for that crotch. And none of the joints are loose in the hips so far. Bringing the leg forward, that could definitely be tighter, but you do get to do that, so that works out. It shouldn't really be an issue because of the way it's split at the front. It just pulls along fairly naturally, so that's good. You do get a thigh swivel, that's fine. How do the knees work? I'm very curious about this. Well, that's not the best design ever. There's a lot of gapping going on there, obviously. It's not terrible, I guess, because it's so big and broad, and he's got such bulky pants, it doesn't stand out too much. But if you're looking at it from the side, it's pretty terrible. But otherwise, it may not be too noticeable. I don't know, something about it is making me not hate it as much as I otherwise would. But they could have done so much better, that's for sure. I mean, honestly, you don't even get 90 degrees, so they should have just made it a single joint and kind of done it with the way NECA does their joints, or the way Play Arts Kai did Ibuki, or Variable Action Heroes did Usopp. There's lots of ways to do this that are better than this. This doesn't drive me nuts like it could, but it's definitely not particularly good. One thing that does bug me though is that it's completely flat. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that, but where the pants are, where it would be hollow, where the leg goes in, you get a boot swivel, so to speak, but it's just a flat piece of plastic. They didn't like at least round it out or something. That doesn't look particularly good. As for the ankle, you can bring the foot all the way back. He might have really big feet too. They seem kind of big, don't they? Really long feet. And they don't go all that far forward. Again, Storm needs to do that. That's something that's been an issue since basically the beginning of the Storm figures, other than maybe the MK Ninjas. The ankles don't go very far forward, so that's a bummer. Nice ankle rocker though, so that's good. And the toe hinge, which is most likely useless. It's stiff enough that it'll work. Doesn't have a ton of range. It's okay. I don't mind that. It'll be usable enough. So articulation on this guy is definitely the weakest point for sure, and that's kind of a problem because these guys are meant to be highly articulated high-end figures. I'll give the articulation on this guy only a 6 out of 10. We have a lot of issues that maybe can be rectified, but fresh out of the package, it's definitely not great for articulation. Once you find a pose that you're happy with, is it going to look good on a shelf? Probably, but it definitely has a few issues in the aesthetic department also. And the accessories, not as good as Storm is used to, but they're not bad. So I'm going to give this guy a final verdict of only, for a Storm figure. Remember, my ratings are all based on what the figure is, what it could be based on what we know is possible from the same company or comparable companies. In this case, Storm's kind of in their own league, so I'm rating it against other Storm figures. That's how this works. A 7 out of 10 is what this guy's going to get. He could definitely be a lot better in a lot of ways. Still perfectly suitable. If you're really into this guy, then I think you're going to be okay with it. But there are a lot of issues which I pointed out that you need to be aware of before you spend your money in order to make a good buying decision. Alright guys, there it is. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, well, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day and thousands already on the channel. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.